All right, I wanted to start recording. We're still in kind of pre-class chat here, but we were talking about visiting a national park, and I was asking about hiking, and that's another thing that I want you all to pay attention to. How does that feel if you have some of these tools that you're using? You can use them, throughout your day, throughout your hike even, and see if walking and hiking feels a little different on your body. So the things that used to receive some compression and pressure, knees, hips, low back, if that was ever a thing for you, or maybe it just feels a little bit more easeful, or like you have space, right, to hike with. So I don't know if you noticed a difference already, Nicole, or if you have much to compare it to, but I would love for you all to look into, to be aware of your daily movements like that. What does a hike feel like after you've been doing this work for months or even weeks, or even, the first like 3 days before you go, that kind of thing. Because you really might notice a difference, not just in how you sit at the office or are out working in the field, but fun things like, simple things like a hike might start to feel pretty different. So do look out for that for sure. All right, welcome Susan. Hi Kristen. Hi Laura. Let me get myself pinned here and we'll get moving. We're continuing on in our month of the squat. So how has it been going? Are you finding ways to bring in these little tiny, I'm giving you little nuggets of kind of like mini squats or squat ideas to bring into your life? Is it happening? Are you starting to see where they can fit in a little bit? I see some nods there. Okay, great. And hopefully, if not already, you'll start to feel a little bit of a difference in kind of opening hips. Knees will often feel better when you have space in your hips. That might take longer for some of us over others, but it's our start to happier knees, happier hips, happier low back also. Let's start sitting like we did last time. We'll do a whole bunch of review of our other pieces. If you do not already have whatever you like to use for a calf stretch, please get that nearby. And again, just as a reminder, we're not going to stand up yet, but the calf stretch could be up on a thick rolled up towel or blanket. If you're at the office, don't have anything there yet, a stack of books or binders that you don't mind putting part of your foot on, if that's not too much. Other things I've seen people use, like take their shoes off and just kind of stack like a boot, two boots, or the fronts of two boots, or whatever you get, to get some height for the front of the foot. But we're going to start sitting, just playing with some of the things that you already know, like snow globe. We're going to do everything kind of pretty quick here. How many of you have played with this between things, or just think about stretching your arms up overhead a little bit more often? Great. And Laura's sharing the link to all of the movement recordings if you want to watch and review. And remember, snow globe is the shoulders are not going to be hiked up toward your ears. They're going to be dropped down and really wide, like your shoulder blades are way away from your spine, and just playing around. Once you get the basics, you can start moving your wrists too. And for all of this work, looking for, can I find the work underneath the shoulder blade to move around, rather than what we usually do is like this tense shoulder on top, right? It's a very different experience than boom. And you might not be able to get as high with that kind of, the sound effect I would use is boom, right? Like getting under it. So you might not go as high and still get that support. So you can find it all over your snow globe, finding your space. And that's it. And maybe we just do that quick little version. Then we'll play with a couple of our twists. I like to lead with the eyes because our eyes need a stretch, and the eyes, if you let your eyes turn all the way to one side, you can feel a little relationship deep within the neck, and you can let your eyes turn your head, and your head turns your shoulders. And again, maybe the first time you're just looking for the rotation that you can find without cranking it, right? Just as a little warm up. See how far back you can look without popping your ribs out of that core cylinder, our slinky, the length of the slinky. And then you can come back to the center and let your eyes lead. Just get that little stretch, right? If your eyes turn all the way to one side, it's a little stretch back there. And then your eyes can lead your head. And then your head can lean your shoulders and your ribs. And your sits bones are still pretty grounded. You're perched on top. I didn't do that exercise to make sure you're perched, but you might have that by now. No pull, no stress, just drop the ribs. Feel like your kidneys have some space in the back without getting crunched. And then come back. This time we'll do one more each side, just as a little warm up for your spine. Head, eyes, turn your shoulders. Ribs are still dropped into that core space, so you're not popping them out. Just sigh those suckers down. And then if it feels good to give yourself a little added twist, you can keep looking really far around the bend. Head keeps turning. And just take a little breath. See if you can imagine your breath through the length of your spine without, again, popping open one side of your slinky. It's all kind of long on all sides. And then let's see, eyes lead to the other side. Eyes, head, shoulders, ribs. You can hold on to the chair if that feels good to give yourself a little extra reach. Ribs are still dropped down, so it's a little bit more of a wringing out of the whole thing rather than a crunch and a wrap. So you can find that very subtle. Good. And a great way, just to reiterate, and you could do that. So on your own, just, you don't have to do all the one at a time. You could just kind of turn, have a moment, turn, have a moment. Maybe you play with turning back and forth one day. There's a lot of room for play. If you haven't noticed, that's how I roll. So you can explore. I just gave you one of those ways. You could combine a twist with your snow globe. Let's get fancy. Go ahead and try it. You could play with a twist and the snow globe at the same time. You want to get more than one in play. You can twist the other way and snow globe. Just notice that there's a lot of possibilities there, and then it doesn't take very much time at all. Yeah. All right. Before we get to the more squat looking things, grab your, so one, stand up, grab your calf stretcher, whatever you like to use to stretch your calves. I'm going to use this half dome here. And this is the one where you step on whatever you got with the front of your foot. So that's lifted. And then you kind of start stepping forward and forward and forward and forward. Maybe you get up and over this way. Maybe that's a little bit too tight. Maybe I'll get my head in view a little bit. And just hang out there for a moment. So part of your limitation in a squat is going to be this ankle flexion, right? Being able to bend at the ankle is going to limit you in a certain way. So let's make sure the calf has some room for starters. We've been doing it with a straight leg, which is great. And I highly recommend this, remember, as a daily practice. If you've got something that you can just throw down, the rolled up towel could live on your sink maybe, or right next to your sink. You could do it while you're brushing your teeth. This is a great playground for your foot. If you have a standing desk, having something where you can constantly go in and out of a little calf stretch is lovely. From here, instead of a straight leg, try a couple times just to bend your knees, only if it doesn't hurt your knees. Just a little bend in your knees and feel how you kind of run into the end of the ankle there. So you can hang out there. It's a little bit more of a soleus. It's the deep part of the calf stretch. And you'll just get into that fold, right? We've been playing with the folds. The folds of your ankles are pretty important for getting up and down from the floor, like we've talked about. Good. And then just step back, feel the difference as you stand on your 2 feet. They're going to feel wildly different. You could even kind of walk around a little bit in your space and notice how the one leg just has more, it's more open around your ankle. So more room for possibility, right? Try the same thing on the other side. We'll start with this straight leg. The toes are elevated on whatever apparatus, device, rolled up towel, blanket, whatever you find, books. But something that elevates the front of your foot while your heel can really be grounded on the floor. This side is tighter for me, so I'm not going to be able to walk my foot quite as far forward. Right? So the further the other foot goes forward, the bigger the pull, but you want to be kind of standing on the foot that's getting the stretch. You have some grounding into that foot. With this straight leg, your legs are long, you're not bending the knees. If you need to bend, back off until you can straighten. And this is the calf stretch again. Super great everyday, very important movement vitamin. Tight ankles will affect and tight back line will affect everything, your gait, the way you walk, the way you stand. From here, we've been here a while. Let's go ahead and try bending that knee. And you can just run into where the ankle is going to stop you, the soleus, the tension in the soleus might stop you. And only bend your knee if it's feeling okay. And just give it a little, just kind of say hello to that edge really gently, really sweetly. Nothing that hurts your knees. You're probably not gonna be able to bend that much, so probably won't affect the knees too much. I'm just gonna, you can hang out there for a moment. Just getting that little pull. Come off of there, find your standing position for a second. Notice that it might be easier to kind of relax in your legs. It might be easier to not kind of sit in your joints with your pelvis forward. You have some support back behind you. If you walk, there's kind of an ease around your feet and ankles maybe. Okay, so you can get rid of that. We've played with, let's kind of go through a lot of the squat things we've played with. We'll do speed round here. We've played with 1 foot on a chair. This could also be a high step. Get a better here. We've played with this idea of sometimes if we're just doing this kind of squat that hurts knees, it's a hard ask in the beginning before we find that angle. So a baby step, and I'm cutting my head off on purpose here, is just sitting your tail back, right? The sits bones that you sit on, you're kind of presenting them behind you as you don't have to bend down very far to get that crease. Your torso can come forward. It's like you're sitting in there, just in and out and just sitting into it. You have some weight forward or a little back. It doesn't really matter. You can kind of play with that, whatever doesn't feel bad on your knees. You can play in there. You can play with your leg a little further out to the side. Does it feel okay to have some more weight in it? Does it feel better to have less? But you're really in that crease, right? So it's kind of warming us up for finding that fold, getting some work in there. Try the other side. In the past, we've been doing mostly the sit back and come up and the sit back and come up. If that feels better, you can do that, or you can stay low and kind of put some weight forward and some weight back, but keeping tail open, sits bones aiming back, and just kind of play into that deep hip crease for a moment. Kind of move back and forth. If it doesn't bother your knees, for most of us, it's going to feel okay. We're getting more into the hip crease. The knees aren't receiving too much pressure. It's why this is a baby step. You can move the foot to a different place, a little further to the side, maybe. You can do the same, kind of give it some weight, and then back off, give it some weight, stay low. It's like you're sitting into that crease. Yep, good. All right, and then we have the happy hamstring version of the squat, which goes like, right, our happy hamstrings are hanging out here, moving around, open tail. Pull those pants up, good. So open tail, I highly recommend a nice elastic waistband so you can have, I tried to wear like regular people clothes so that I can do offensive things in offensive clothes. But still nice elastic waistband is nice for some of this stuff, right? So that's the happy hamstrings, right? Just kind of hanging out, tail open, the backs of the legs really long. You feel this pull in the backs of the legs, which are important. And then adding on to that, you could pull forward this way or still on your forearms, doesn't matter. And you're just playing with this squat, kind of bending, but still thinking sits bones away from your arms. So there's kind of a sense of moving backwards with your hips to bend and straighten. For some of you, you might want to go a wider stance. You can play with all of them, right? You can play narrow. How does that feel? You can play wide. But the idea is thinning into that crease, tail up and open, as opposed to the opposite is that tuck tail, right? It's not that. That open tail. Finding the folds that we've been looking for the whole time. You can kind of do one leg squatting at a time back here. Notice again, I'm giving you ways to play, not to make it overwhelming, but just to say, here's the basic outline. Do with it what you like and what feels interesting to you. I'm giving you some options. So that's the happy hamstring squat. It's from the same position that we were doing the happy hamstring stretch. Okay. Next, I'm going to up level that, and it's a little more challenging to find space for. I'm going to use, I have a railing over here. And this becomes more like a hang. I think I can do it this far away. But grabbing onto something, it could be a door frame with two hands. It could be a sink. It could be even your desk. You could kind of get this a little bit. So you might not have the space to do it right this second, but you might find something where it would work. But the idea of getting a pull. It's like you're hanging into a squat, right? So it's like you're letting your tail hang all the way toward the floor and your arms are holding something higher. Only if this feels okay for your knees. So this might be kind of a more advanced level that you don't find quite yet, and it might work better if I'm here. So it's this idea of grabbing something up higher and sitting back and kind of hanging from there into whatever part of a squat feels okay. So just letting yourself get lower. The key here is you don't have all of your weight in your own legs, right? Your arms are going to take some of it. So it's just the idea of, could you let things go lower? And does that feel okay? And is it too much? So you stop as soon as your knees say no. But some of you might notice, you know, if this squatting without hands is too much, which it's going to be for most of you, for some of you, if you can take weight out of that, it's going to feel better. And you could just hang there for a minute and then you could just come back up. And maybe that's it. Maybe you do all the way down with support, and maybe you're able to scoot your shins back and get your butt back and help pull yourself up with your arms. So it's not just about your legs. And it's harder with a desk. A sink is really great for this, right? If you have something like this chair, it's not very stable, so it's hard to actually hang off of it. It's just going to be pulled with me. So looking for something where you could kind of get all the way down would be great. And again, that might not be exactly where you are right now, but you could get creative. Just a nice, simple way to get a little bit deeper in your squat. Good. All right. And let's do, after all that, I'm going to make you do at least a couple times, get all the way down to the floor with or without hands. Do what your body is telling you to do, right? So after all that, it might feel okay to no hands it down to the floor. Or it might be, I need to be by my bench still, so I can push my hands on my bench and lower myself down. Do you see all the pieces of the squat that are in there? And there's a million different ways to get up and down, with or without hands, right? Gently. Sit down however you like. A million different ways to get up. Right? And I know sometimes, again, it gets hard with typical office clothes. So that's another way we get limited. Try one more time, all the way down, all the way up. Let me see it. And if you're still using your chair as a baby step, that's perfectly fine. But sometimes it's just like the clothing will get restricted, will restrict us, right? Do you feel that ever? When you wear those tight pants and you're like, I can't do that in these pants, right? Good, come on back to your seat. And just feel, is it easier to find? We always look at that. No hands, Nicole, nice work. Anyone else doing no hands already? I don't expect it. Oh my gosh, okay, more than I thought. So we're still, baby stepping our way. So if you're already doing no hands, that's huge. But just don't worry if you're not, is what I'm saying. Sit tall in your sits bones. Is that easier? Do you feel like that? Oh, I'm just perched on my wide open sits bones. Do you feel that? Yeah, I'm getting some nods. As opposed to that being too hard and always wanting to default to this, right? I'm not saying you're going to be perched up on your sits bones all the time, but they're available. They're more available to you as an easeful place to sit, right? Rather than having to depend on the collapse to find an easeful place, right? That's what we're looking for. We'll do more about sitting at another time, but for now, let's just keep playing with this idea of building that squat. There's a million different ways. If you don't like that hanging version, don't focus on that. Focus on the 1 foot up on a bench or a chair. Focus on that happy hamstring squatting, and all of that will help you build to eventually, possibly, that hang, even if it still feels like so far away right now. All right, that's it for today. Excellent, excellent work. Any insight from today that anyone wants to share? Anything that you found or understood differently, or that you're looking forward to adding in?
I had a question about that hand squat, like when you're hanging.
Yeah.
Is it pulling in your back too? Like, what are you doing with your back? Like,
as in what kind of,
how does the back feel? Like, Are
Okay.
you stretching? Yeah. How does it feel when you're squatting and hanging?
I,
Like, is
so
it stretching the back?
yeah, it will absolutely stretch. Just like we do a little bit of a pull with the hamstring, this kind of lengthening that's happening here, that you're kind of making happen. In the hanging version, there's gravity that makes it happen. So you don't have
Okay.
to make your back stretch, but yeah, your pelvis is hanging away from your fingers. And that's hanging is a whole nother movement vitamin that we'll talk about, but it's hard to do. This is kind of one of the it's hard to do in the office, but we'll talk about it as its own vitamin at some point. So you're already getting this other vitamin in at the same time
Got
that we
it.
haven't talked about, which is hanging, and that includes some grip strength. And this is an easy way to do it because it's not all your weight, right? Most of your weight is actually in your feet. You're just taking some weight into your fingertips and then that whole length. So you get that nice long pull from fingertips to tail. So your arms, your side body, your back, all of it gets a nice opening and a nice stretch. So if that one feels good for you, there's a lot of great movement vitamins in that one exercise. So good question. Absolutely. So many things going on in there.
Okay,
I'm glad
thanks.
you mentioned that. Other questions or observations, Susan? Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Is to me, it felt really good to be able to hang and exactly that that it stretched my back out as a byproduct of the move as well. Even though we were focusing more on the hips, it felt really nice in the back as well.
Good, good. And we need that, right? Because sitting, standing, like gravity is always that downward pressure. Even if we have good alignment, it's just downward pressure. It's just everything's sitting on top of each other. So if you can get those moments of the opposite, that lengthening, it feels so good and so good for you. Great observation. Thanks, Susan. Anybody else before we go? Amazing. All right. Well, as usual, drag a friend into this. Let other people see the crazy things that you're doing in the office and bring all of it home too. This is not just for office. It's kind of, you can put it everywhere. So if there's a better place in your house, then use your house for it. Find those cues where you can kind of hang from railings, sinks, door frames. Just explore. That'll be your homework. Explore your house and your office space and look for ways you can kind of mimic this, and then pick your favorite and do it every time you walk past it. When you can, just do it. Before you brush your teeth, you can pull on the sink. Before you wash the dishes, you could pull on the sink. It can make a really fun break room sort of experience. I don't know. All right. I'll see you all next week. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Zoe. Bye.
Bye.